How to know if a paper is good?
How do you know if a paper's good?
Yeah, I would like to know. How do you know if a paper is good? Us that don't know and cannot tell, like, you can probably look at a paper and know that, oh, this is crap.
Sometimes.
Sometimes,
But
okay, not always.
It's really hard to understand these things.
All right.
Especially if it's a little bit outside your field.
Right.
I think if it's in your field, it can become quite easy to look through and understand why a paper is good or not. But this is a really hard thing, and I only started teaching like a lot within the past year or two.
Yeah.
And that's one of the most common questions that I got.
Oh, how to know if a paper is good or not. That's what they ask.
And like in my head, I'm just like, well, of course, you just read the paper.
You just know.
You just know. And I'm like, that is not a good enough response.
No,
especially
I agree.
for first or second year undergraduate students.
Because we don't know. Or they don't know.
And even other scientists don't know.
No.
So I think one of the things which is commonly said is like, check, is the paper peer reviewed?
Right.
But like we said in the last episode, it's not really a marker of quality, because sometimes like you're sort of relying on 2 or 3 or 4 people to catch these things.
Right.
To find out if there's problems with the paper.
Yeah.
But maybe they've missed stuff.
No,
maybe the editors missed something. Maybe there's some flaws in the paper and you just don't know.
Right.
And because peer review has historically been limited to those 2 or 3 people, this could be a problem. And it's very hard to... what you can do is you can sort of correct the scientific literature. So if there's an error, there's a thing that you can do within science which is called a retraction.
I feel like I've heard of that.
Where if there's like an error in the paper, or if the author's been a naughty boy or a naughty girl, it's happened a lot.
He's cut some corners.
They've cut some corners.
Yeah.
I mean, some people, it's rare, but it happens. It's maybe more common than we think, unfortunately, is some people literally make up data. There's a story a couple of years ago, well, about 20 years ago, of a guy that was eventually caught for making up a lot of data. And he would say, at night, pour myself a glass of red wine, start putting in the numbers. And it sucks because people trust this stuff.
Oh, right. It shakes like the whole kind of foundation.
It does. Especially like, what if you're doing stuff working with like treatments for like diseases?
And you're reading something that you think you can trust that's telling you something wrong.
Look, we trust these things. So
that is bad.
Recently there's been a case with a lot of fraud around Alzheimer's disease.
Okay.
I don't know the exact details, but there's a lot of work in there where we just can't trust the results.
Darn it.
And it's crazy because we have this expectation that people are doing this stuff honestly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously there's a big difference between I made an honest mistake versus straight up fraud.
Yeah, so sitting and drinking your wine.
Yeah,
and,
but doing data.
Yeah.
But these things happen a lot. And there is a mechanism of retracting a paper where we would say, we're retracting this paper because we can't trust the results because of X, Y, Z.
Right.
So this paper is retracted. So there is a system of doing that.
Right.
But in terms of quality, there are some sort of databases that we use which actually will say this is a peer-reviewed paper.
Yeah. I was going to ask, where do you see if things are peer-reviewed? Does it say it like under the title or at the bottom, like in fine print? Like if I'm reading an article, how do I know if it's peer-reviewed? So
sometimes you have to check the journal. So the journal will generally say, this is a peer-reviewed journal.
Got it.
But there are some types of articles in journals that are not peer-reviewed.
Okay.
So research papers are typically peer-reviewed, but sometimes you might write a very short opinion piece.
Okay.
I've done a few of these pieces where I've been asked, can you comment on this other paper?
Okay.
And then I commented on it, and it hasn't really been peer-reviewed.
All right. But then it's your opinion. Then it doesn't really need to be peer-reviewed, does it?
I've written a lot of opinion papers which have been peer-reviewed.
Okay.
But it's just that's just the format there.
All right.
So, yeah. Some of these databases will tell you this has been a peer-reviewed paper.
Right.
Or you have to check the journal, which will say this has been peer-reviewed. And it's one of those things that when you're in the field, when you see the journal, you instantly know, I respect that journal.
Yes.
Some of these journals are set up. So in a lot of subfields, we have these scientific societies where these are groups of people that have these non-profit organizations which bring together subfields.
Right.
And some of these societies have their own journals, and they're doing it to publish work within that subfield.
Right.
As a rule of thumb, you can generally trust those journals quite well.
No, that makes sense, because that's what I try to like teach like my kids as well.
Yeah.
Like if it's something you know that they have a reputation to protect.
Exactly.
And they have like they've been doing it for a lot of years,
Yeah.
and like if they printed something shady, they would take it really seriously.
Yeah.
Then it's more likely to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then that is one good marker there of like, is this journal? But again, you have to sort of dig a bit in, and like when you go to the journal, it'll go, this is a society journal, and then you're like, oh, this is a little bit better.
Yeah.
So that could be one way of doing it.
Yeah.
But it can be really hard otherwise, because even with these fancy society journals, you can have a paper which is bad quality. So what's happened historically is that scientists have judged papers purely based on where they've been published.
Ooh, okay. Without like a critical eye?
Yes. So we have an internal ranking. There is an external, there's a number. I hate this number. There's a number called the impact factor.
The impact
factor.
Oh, that sounds very powerful.
Very powerful.
Yes.
So this was a number which was, they came up with this a few decades ago, and it was a way for libraries to decide, should I stock this journal? Remember in the last episode we were talking about, we had like paper journals.
Yes, and you'd go and like get the paper journal and photocopy. Yeah.
So journals had to think about, do we have the money and the space for this?
Yes.
They would use this impact factor, which is essentially a number which looks at how many people are citing the work within this particular journal.
To see if it's like worth it.
Yeah. So people have used citations as a rough proxy of, is this a good quality paper?
Right.
If lots of people are citing it, they could be citing it going, this paper sucks.
Yeah.
Not often. But people use that as a proxy. And so
that makes sense.
This was set up a long while ago as a way of libraries to understand, should we stock this journal?
Right.
And then it's sort of, the horse was bolted, and people were going, well, maybe we can use this as a way of figuring out, is this a good journal?
Right. Okay.
And then people then got to the point where we've been incentivized to sort of go as high of an impact factor. Everyone within their field knows, I need to get a paper in a journal which is above 3, which is above 10. And
is 10 the highest?
It goes up to like, during COVID, some journals are like 300.
What?
Yeah.
So there's not like a scale, like how Norway does movies, like 1 to 6 timing cost. You get like a dice throw.
That's another episode. But it's so typically, like historically,
it's saying how often it had been cited, like if it's a lot.
In a way.
Okay, in a way.
So what happened was people have been thinking about the quality of a paper based on other papers in that journal which were published previously.
All right.
And they go, that paper was in that journal, must be a good paper.
I would probably think the same.
No, but it's a reasonable thing. Yeah. But what it's meant is that we've been incentivized to sort of target these papers or target these particular journals and not even consider the quality of the paper, just considering the journal that it's published in, when it might not necessarily be a good marker. And there's been like a really famous case, one of the most sort of prestigious journals, medicine journals called The Lancet, published a paper a couple of decades ago. You might know of it, the paper which claimed that vaccines cause autism.
I have heard about that.
And that was published in a very prestigious journal. And so if you were just to go by the journal, you go, this is a good paper. There was problems with the paper. Paper was retracted. But that was in a very prestigious journal. So you can't necessarily use that as a particular marker. This is really hard though, because historically what's happened is that a lot of researchers have been judged on the journals they publish in.
Right.
Some universities are sort of turned away from that to go focus on the paper, don't focus on the journal, which I think is a really good idea.
Yeah, I get that.
But I guess the big problem in science is people are very short on time. So they're like, what do I cite? What should I read? Fancy journal.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what happens.
And for us on the outside as well, like I would not have I'd have no clue how to see, is this a good paper? So my go-to would be, okay, which journals can I trust? Which are the best, like most reputable ones? Yeah. And that would be the ones I would go for. So for us, it's almost like a little map to find out like what is a good paper. Because if I had to figure that out on my own, I'd be completely lost.
It's really hard. And I think that's why it's really important as scientists that we need to get out there and talk about work.
No, that's really good.
Because then we can talk about this work and go, hey, this is actually really important stuff. Not because it was published in this fancy journal, but because of the implications here. And these are the sort of results that we can trust because of X, Y, Z.
And then we understand more.
Yeah, like some of this stuff, in an effort to make communication more seamless between scientists. That's why a lot of this terminology is used, not because we want to sound all hoity-toity, but it's a way of quickly communicating. So we use specific terminology so we know that's exactly what she is talking about. That's exactly what he is talking about. But that can make these things not as accessible for lay people as well. Some journals do this cool thing where they have a lay person's abstract. Okay. So they'll have the science abstract, whereas we say where we're communicating to other scientists. And we have a lay person's abstract as well, where, again, it's not dumbing things down, but it's about speaking using a language people are familiar with.
No, exactly. It's words that a normal person would understand.
It's a really good way of doing it, especially for things people are very interested in. So, journals that are looking at, child reading development.
Yeah, super interesting.
Like parents want to help their kids to read better.
1,000%.
Teachers want to help their kids to read better. There'll be a layperson's abstract.
Oh, that's
which is
good,
really,
though.
really good.
Because there can be times where I've read something and I've been reading articles and it's super interesting, but you read it and you're like, my mind is working and I know I'm not a dumb person, but I don't understand what, like if I was going to retell this, I couldn't do it because it's written with so much like terminology that you're not used to. So you can't it needs to be, not dumbed down, but like you said, simplified or just explained with different terminology.
Different audience. So it is good that we have these systems there. I wish more journals would do this.
You think there'll be more of it like in the next years? You think that'll become more common or you think it's stand still?
I hope so. So different funding agencies also have requirements that every year, when I report the projects that I'm funded for, I need to have the scientific explanation of this is what I've done, but also need a layperson's explanation of this is what I've done, so people can actually read, the public who are funding my research can actually read what I've done. So
and understand, and like that's how cool it, oh, that sounds awesome.
And I think that's a really good thing. So it's really cool. Like I'm seeing a lot of scientists now that are doing more and more stuff on TikTok, for instance.
Nice.
Talking about their work.
Oh, that's cool.
What they do, especially work that's relevant to younger people.
Yeah, right.
That's the audience.
No, because I don't know how many people, and I've tried to tell like the people, the students, and especially like more the older kids, like 8th and 9th, 10th graders. They're like, oh no, there was this psychologist or the scientist on TikTok and he said this and this. Yeah. And I was like, oh, be careful, check that he's actually a scientist, or check actually that, like, you got to check that as well. Because then they're like, but he says, again, it's going back, check your source.
Yeah, and like, it's hard. I'm in two minds about this.
Yeah, okay.
Because I want scientists and researchers to do this stuff.
No, because it's so good that they are on the platform where the kids will see it. And they're super interested in being able to say like, oh, a scientist said this. Yeah. But then it's, sorting through what's just crap and what's
because it could
legit.
It could very well be legit.
Yes, right.
But then sometimes, like I'm still in 2 months about this because the benefits of somebody that really believes, that really understands the work is really, really good.
Yes.
But unfortunately, with things like TikTok and YouTube, like the algorithm favors certain things.
Oh, of course it does.
And sometimes people might be embellishing the results of stuff. Okay. I think, a really big thing was this discussion around the benefits of cold bathing.
Yes,
which I tried for the first time.
I've seen pictures.
You saw the photos.
I did. I doubted first.
Everyone doubted.
Yeah.
Not for the potential health benefits, because I just thought it'd be a cool experience.
Yeah.
But a lot of discussion around, especially in Norway, like what are the health benefits here? And people are talking about that. But a lot of these things are based on research studies, which aren't that great quality.
No, right.
So
and how would you know that if you've just heard something that sounds logical and smart on TikTok by someone that seems intelligent and
And this happened. A very famous podcaster talked about this and was citing the study, and then people looked into the study.
Bad study.
It just wasn't that great quality.
Okay.
And so look, I think that right now, as far as I know, the jury's out as to the benefits. It's probably one of those things that the reason that people that do this are healthier is because they're already healthy in the first place.
Because they're looking for...
If you have a heart condition, you're not jumping in 2-degree water.
No, maybe not.
So whether there's causative, I don't know. It's, we need to investigate these things.
Yeah.
But, so I think I'm very positive towards science communication in general.
Yes.
But at the same time, you just want to make sure that, there's evidence behind what people are saying. But it's hard, though, because,
I get that.
Do we need, like, a science communicator.
Yeah.
Like, this person, they're legit.
No, it's like I was thinking on Instagram when they're like celebrities or whatever, when you have a certain number, you get like that little blue check on Instagram to like that it's really you. You don't think TikTok has something like if you actually have like a proper like job and you're actually a scientist, you get like a little stamp that shows that like you can trust this guy. This guy's clever.
I mean, I guess again, you can use like, this person is at this institution. But again, that's not a guarantee of quality.
It's not a guarantee.
Like, it's a pretty good proxy, but it's not a guarantee. But I think the idea of sort of verification of this person is this who they say they are.
That was the word I was looking for. Yeah.
That could be helpful.
Yeah.
It's
still a bit of a rodeo show, though.
It is, yeah. And but that's why I want to sort of encourage my friends who are doing good research, like, hey, you should talk about this stuff. The stuff that you're doing is really, really good.
Yeah.
There are a lot of colleagues that are talking a lot about the impact of social media on kids.
Oh, yeah, interesting.
And this is like a really hot button topic.
Yeah.
We both have kids. It's something that we're both thinking about as well. And there's a lot of stuff out there. And luckily I've got some colleagues who know the stuff, and they're out there going like, here's what the evidence is. Here's what we know.
Awesome.
Here's what we don't know.
Yeah.
And it's good that they're out there. But there's so many different research fields. But, I think the other hard thing as well is like, as scientists, we're expected to do so much.
Yes.
You are a researcher, you are a communicator,
Yeah,
you're balancing finances, you're recruiting, you're doing HR stuff, you're doing graphic design. Like, we're not trained for all this stuff.
That's a lot of hats.
We're trained to be researchers and to be educators, but you're sort of expected to do all this extra stuff.
In order to get it out and present it properly and,
do all that stuff. And so a couple of years ago, I would say every scientist needs to communicate, but it's not for everyone.
Right.
So, some universities, my university has like a press team to help with this stuff. But
right, where they would then do the job and kind of take the information and help get it out.
Yeah, that would help you.
All right.
Yeah. So I've got a great press team that sort of help with this kind of stuff.
Nice.
So some findings, I'm like, hey, I got this cool thing.
Yeah.
Let's put this out to the press. And these people are typically they're typically trained as journalists.
Right.
So they can do all this sort of stuff
and get kind of the information out in a good way.
Yeah. So, but it comes back to this idea that we're expected to do so many things.
No.
So not everyone, this is something I've changed my mind about, not everyone should be communicating because people don't have the training to do this kind of stuff.
Then it won't be done well.
Yeah. But potentially. Yeah. But I don't know, like, I think there are so many ways to communicate. It doesn't have to be TikTok, it doesn't have to be YouTube.
No, that's true.
Yeah.